Hi class, hope all is going well. Stopping by to go through Module 1 and touch bases on Module 2. So inside of Module 1, it really opens up and lays down the foundation of our criminal justice system. What does it mean when you say criminal justice system? What is that comprised of? In this chapter, we talked about what it means and what it's comprised of. There are three components of our criminal justice system. Three. You have your law enforcement, your court, and your corrections. Law enforcement, courts, and corrections. Those three entities make up our criminal justice system. So when we say that somebody is entering the system, has gone through the system, that's exactly what it's saying. Also, it talks about the criminal justice system and how we have two, if you want to say, jurisdictions. We have this dual system, two jurisdictions. We have federal and state. Federal and state, or state and federal. In your PowerPoint, you notice the picket fence illustration, and that kind of clearly depicts what it is we're saying. So we're saying, if you want to, for example, here are your three components of our criminal justice systems: the courts, the law enforcement, and corrections. And then you have the two that go over federal and state. So that's kind of like that picket fence analogy, saying that each entity has a state and a federal. So if you talk law enforcement, for example, what is an example of your state law enforcement? Or if you want to say like your local or your state, you have your highway patrol, North Carolina Highway Patrol. What's an example of federal law enforcement? Any of the three acronyms, right? FBI, the CIA. So that's the state, North Carolina Highway Patrol, then you have your federal. Same thing with the court. You have your state court and then you have your federal court. So yes, it's true. You can commit one crime and be charged state and federally, because those are two different jurisdictions outlined in that. And then with your corrections, as far as state, you have your local or your county jail, which you can go downtown to the Cumberland County, and then you have your prison, your federal system. So making sure you understand those components. What are the main components of the criminal justice system, and what are the levels, federal and state? Sorry, I have something in my eye. In addition, it went through, which I like to highlight, and outlined and provided definitions for some of our crimes that are committed: larceny, murder, terrorism. The one I like to spend a little time on is assault and battery. Assault and battery. Because a lot of times we use those together, assault and battery. But what is the difference between the two? Assault is actually just the threat or an attempt to do violence to another person. So that can be merely verbal. You don't have to physically do anything to assault someone. You have simple assault, aggravated assault. So again, it's just that threat or attempt to do violence when you get that immediate intimidation of physical harm. So understand, to assault someone, if you can be charged, let me tell you, you can be charged and not actually ever lay a hand on someone. Now, once you actually become physical with the individual, now you've completed battery. So that's the difference with that, battery, and that's the act of physically contacting, making contact, or doing something. So understanding that. The other two that a lot of people get confused are the difference between burglary and robbery. Burglary and robbery. So burglary is the act of breaking into a structure or a home. So it's the act of breaking into a structure or a home, whereas robbery is the act of taking property from another person. So you cannot burglarize a person. I can't rob a house. Does that make sense? If that makes sense. Because if I'm going into your home, I've done what? If I'm taking something for that person, I've done what? So those are four things I like to highlight: assault, battery, burglary, and robbery. Understanding the difference between those when you're going with that. Now let's talk about your discussion board for a minute. I know some of you may have been a little uneasy with the discussion board and not quite understanding the purpose of it. Well, in this chapter, before going in further into it, we talk about the foundation and the premises of our society and our views. We have individual rights and we have public order advocates. Individual right advocates and public order advocates. Individual right advocates say, these are my rights. They're guaranteed to me by the Constitution. I do not want them infringed upon for any reason. Public order advocates say, I don't mind giving up a little bit of my right in order for the protection and the greater good for everyone else. The classic example I like to use is with the Patriot 9/11 Act. So let's say if there was something in that document that stated certain trigger words would, again, redundant trigger words, would trigger a tap on your phone. how many would be in favor of that? So if you were to say terrorism, bomb, president, if you said so many trigger words, it will automatically trigger a tap on your phone. What would you think? Some of you would say, I don't care if I'm not doing anything. I'd rather, yeah. Some people would say, no, that's my expectation. I have a right to my expectation of privacy. If you do not have a search warrant, you do not have the right to tap my phone. So again, those are the two different perspectives we're looking at. Whereas some, they don't mind giving up some rights, and others they do. So some people may say, yeah, if you can do that and actually be proactive, stop something before it transpires, I don't mind doing that. Others say, no, don't do that because I am guaranteed this by my United States Constitution, and you cannot infringe upon it. I'm not willing to give up my rights. So the point of the DUI was not for you to say drinking and driving is good. That was not the point. The point was for you to look at it from an individual rights perspective versus a public order advocate perspective. So some of the things that have transpired since DUI has become a very prominent and prevalent and very important issue is the way that sometimes now, if you have a habitual offender, they have to do the breathalyzer in order to start their car, and they have random breathalyzer tests that they may have to be administered in their car. Some people would say, why? If I did the crime, I paid my time, now let me go. So the point of this assignment for the discussion board was for you to think from an individual rights advocate point of view or from a public order advocate point of view. Again, it was not designed for you to say public drinking and driving is an okay thing. If you look at the history of it, it's progressively gotten, if you want to say, more stringent. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but looking at that and analyzing it, that was the point of that, for individual rights versus public order. Same thing with traveling. When you choose to fly, you give up the right to what? Search and seize, right? When you voluntarily go through and they're able to search your material, they can go through your stuff, they can pat you down, you can do a full body screen. They have no probable cause to do that, but you voluntarily give that up in order to travel. So those are the type of things that we're talking about when you look at individual rights and public order. You also talked about entering in our criminal justice system. What are the stages to go through once you're in as far as the court? Obviously, the first is you're going to be arrested. Then you're going to be booked. Booking is when they're going to take your picture, your fingerprint, and all of that. Information in your indictment, you're going to be informed. You're going to have your arraignments. Then from your arraignment, once you have your arraignment, that's when they're going to identify what you were charged with, inform you of your charges. That's where you're going to get all of that at. Then that's where you will have a trial. So it's very important to understand you're innocent until proven guilty. So up until that point, you're still innocent. And then you have your trial. Once you complete the trial, they're going to issue a verdict, whether they believe you are guilty or not. After they do the guilty or not guilty, then you're going to have sentencing. So once you've been found guilty, now we're going to have the sentencing. What is going to happen? Most of the time, some of the time, that's when you're going to actually go into the system, into corrections. So hopefully in Module 1, you had a good opportunity to look at understanding briefly, okay, this is the criminal justice system. These are the steps. These are the difference between some of the different laws and understanding that. Moving on to moving on to our next module. When we go into our next module after we do the introduction and we move on to crime statistics. Crime statistics is a way for us to capture trends in the criminal justice field. So is crime up, is crime down? You've seen the time clock. Every 50 seconds, this amount is happening, that is happening. In this chapter, you're learning about the different publications and different tools that are used to gather that information. So you have the UCR. You need to know who's responsible for publishing the UCR, Uniform Crime Report. Who's responsible for publishing? How do they gather their data? You're going to talk about the VCVS. What is that? I'm sorry, NCVS. What is the stand for? National Crime Victimization Survey. What is that? What is the difference between the NCVS and the UCR? Why was one developed? So that's what you want to be able to look at with that. In your discussion board for this week, you're gathering statistics on a specific crime included in the trend data. So you pick whichever crime you want, and I would like you to compare from the state to the national. So I don't want everyone doing North Carolina. You're going to pick one state, maybe pick your home state or pick another state. We have 50 states you can pick from. But you're going to do that from an individual state perspective. And I want you to compare that to the national. So nationally, what's going on in that. With that, you're also going to talk about civil cases. And what is the difference between a civil and a criminal case? In a civil case, what is the purpose? And what is the burden of proof? In a civil case, the burden of proof is preponderance of evidence, which is different than criminal. And criminal is beyond a reasonable doubt. So we need to prove beyond. If I can get one speck of doubt in your mind, you should not convict that person. However, in the civil case, it's preponderance of evidence. So the totality of evidence. The classic case I point to is the O.J. Simpson, which there is an actual movie coming out, and I really would like you guys to watch it. I understand everyone does not have television, but it's O.J. or The People versus O.J. I really want us to be able to watch that, maybe give extra credit on that. But anyways, so he was found guilty on what? He was found guilty in civil, but not guilty in criminal. So what happened in civil case is merely, I don't want to say like that, but it's monetary compensation. If you're convicted or found guilty or something, liable, that's what we're talking about. In civil, you find liable. In a civil case, you're not going to jail. You're going after for money. So O.J. Simpson, in his case, he had to pay back millions of dollars. And what did he do? He wrote the book. If I did it, this is how I did it. And those royalties is what he had to use to pay that family. So understanding the difference between civil and criminal, two different burdens of proof, preponderance of evidence, beyond a reasonable doubt. Which one is a greater test? Which one is a greater test beyond a reasonable doubt? In a civil case, the plaintiff is the person who initiates the lawsuit. That's the person who's bringing it. So if you slip on my sidewalk and you break your ankle, you would be the plaintiff because you would try to sue me because you may say I didn't manage my sidewalk properly or something. And again, in the civil case, you're looking at to see not so much if they're guilty, but if they're held liable. You're also going to talk about different levels in this with crime statistics. You're going to talk about manslaughter and the different types of manslaughter. What's the difference between voluntary and involuntary manslaughter? What's the difference between first and second degree murder? Make sure you can do that. Two things you must have: male NC and male prohibita. We're going to talk about male NC and male prohibita in there. I want you to be able to talk about those, explain what that is, and give me a male NC crime. And what is a male prohibita crime? What does that mean when we say that? That's what you should be able to do in this chapter. I'm not going to give you that. I want you to be able to go in and tell me those things in this chapter. So again, in this chapter, we're talking about crime, being able to gather the crime statistics, being able to read that and compare it. You're going to be able to talk about the difference between civil and criminal. Talk about the UCR and the NCVS, who's responsible for it. Talk about the crimes that are covered in the UCR and what's not covered in that. And dark figure statistics. What are dark figure crime statistics? What does that mean? Those are crimes that are what? You should be able to answer that. Acts involving direct physical contact between at least one offender on an object is what? What type of a crime? Predatory crime, right? You have a predator. You're actually making parts on that. Look at the part 1 offenses and part 2 offenses. Again, none of this makes sense yet till you start reading, but that's what you're actually going to do as we move into the crime statistics. So hopefully this is starting to come full circle with doing your crime statistic and being able to actually calculate crime statistics and understand the importance of I'm trying to think of the word. Understand the importance of being able to calculate statistics correctly. If any of your links do not work in your module 3.1 discussion board, try copying it and pasting it. It may not work if you click directly on that link. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. And we have, can't think of what I was going to say. Go ahead and get started. I look forward to working and grading some of these assignments. So I'll talk to you guys soon. If you need anything, you always know, shoot me an email, give me a call, or we can chat. Periscope, I forgot to take Periscope. If you have an iPhone or Android, you will download the Periscope app. I'm pulling it up on my phone so you can see. Where is my Periscope? Periscope is where I do live chats, and I try to come on in the evenings after hours to chat with you. So some of you work during the day, you can't get a hold of me at night. So I try to come on after night. So I'm going to put my phone up there, and it's this little icon right here. If you go to Periscope, and you can follow me on Periscope, and then what happens is whenever I go live, you will always know, and you can come on and follow me. And my name is Duncan CJC, Duncan DUNCJC on Periscope. So just download the Periscope app. Whenever I come on live to chat, you'll be able to get notified, and we can converse back and forth there. I do open this for all my classes. So if not, go ahead, download Periscope. I will come on later tonight. Now I'm finished. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call. I'll talk to you guys soon.